So good evening, everyone. Welcome to our fourth webinar in this series. This Hussein is coming. Okay. So today our presenter is, I think, known to all of us. There's no, I think, the outsiders, non-members joining us today. So Professor Karnataka, uh, there are some, I think, disturbances. If you can mute your microphones, okay. Thank you. So the Professor Karnathan has kindly accepted to make the fourth presentation. As you know, he's Professor of Chemical and Process Engineering from the University of Peradeniya. And also, he's the Deputy Director of of the University of Peradeniya. And also he has been a consultant to many assignments, the ministries and a lot of other organizations, and is very active as a consultant in various disciplines, especially related to environment and so on. So without taking much time, may I kindly invite Professor Karnatha to commence his presentation. I will stop sharing this and you can share the presentation. Let me stop sharing. Okay. Okay, Professor Karnatha, is over to you.
Okay, thank you very much. I hope you can see the screen.
Yeah, I can see.
Okay.
Yes, we can.
Yeah, and
Yes, we
also I
can.
will switch off the video because I think there is a problem with the signal strength.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Okay. Okay. Now it's
Okay.
full screen. Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Right. Okay. So again, thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to present. I think one important topic which is not very much discussed. And personally, I think this is something actually as Sri Lankans we have to probably concern with. So this is about non-criteria. It's air pollutant. It's not actually only air pollutants. That's why I actually have it included it on the within the brackets. So this is about non-criteria air pollutants and their health impact. So during this presentation, it's going to be a kind of discussion. Probably I will present and then maybe we can have a discussion. Basically, this is about non-criteria air pollutants and also pollutants. Not only air pollutants, as I mentioned. Especially, we will be focusing on the POPs, especially what I call this unintentional persistent pollutant, persistent organic pollutant, and also polyaromatic hydrocarbons. So I'll introduce what are these two, and also we'll discuss why actually we should concern about these compounds in the environment and our exposure to them. So as you know, probably the air pollutants we can divide into broadly into two groups, what are called these criteria air pollutants. So this is what actually we mainly discuss when it comes to air pollution. But also there are other compounds which we can say non-criteria air pollutants. So criteria air pollutants are used to define the air quality. So this is what we measure to define the air quality. So like carbon monoxide, particulates matter, especially PM10 or particulates matter, which has aerodynamic diameter less than 10 microns, and lead, ozone, nitrogen oxide, and sulfur oxide. So these are basically defined by the US Environmental Protection Agency or US EPA as criteria air pollutants. Criteria in the sense these are the criteria that define the air quality. So there are few actually reasons to define them as criteria. One thing actually they are, I mean, almost everywhere because their sources are everywhere. Mainly they come from combustion, like carbon monoxide, particulate matter, and most of other things come from in combustion. So as a result, it's like almost everywhere in the world. Okay, but there are other pollutants. And mainly we discuss like our focus mainly will be on this, but also there are other things what are called these non-criteria pollutants. So the pollutants other than criteria pollutants. So some examples are like these persistent organic pollutants, polyaromatic hydrocarbons, heavy metals, including mercury, lead, and so on. So these are actually probably not widespread as these criteria pollutants, and they have kind of specific sources. But actually, if you take the toxicity and other environmental and health impact, maybe their impact can be actually higher than these criteria pollutants. So our focus will be on this non-criteria pollutants, so NCP. So there are some properties more related to most of them. Okay, so one thing is actually they are persistent. Persistence in the sense they will last a long time in the environment. So if you take like half-life of some of these persistent compound, it will be more than 5 or 10 years. So that means the concentration to decay from whatever the value today to half of it will take 5 to 10 years, unlike most of these criteria pollutants. And then also they are bioaccumulative in the sense like, for example, when they enter the, let's say human or whatever the organs, the species, their output or they will like when we have it's going into the body, the going out from the body is less than what is taken in. So as a result, there will be a kind of accumulation within or even like other animals' body, including. Okay, so this is bioaccumulation. And also there is another kind of property of this one, which is called biomagnification. That is like, for example, when you go along the food chain, mainly because of this bioaccumulation, they will magnify. Now, for example, if you have something like in water, certain concentration of some of these components like this, let's say dioxin, then in fish, actually, it can be something like 70,000 times higher than that. Because of the gradual accumulation of this one, especially in these large fish and so on. So that's another thing actually we have to be concerned with. Then also most of these are toxic, and so as a result, these are harmful to animals, environment, and also human. And there is another reason actually probably we don't pay much attention, that is their latent period. So that means when we expose, it will take long time, maybe sometimes 10 years, to get the impact of that exposure. Like if you take cancer, so when you expose to some carcinogens, maybe we expose it today, but it will take maybe something like 10 years to develop that cancer. So as a result, we don't actually feel the real impact of the exposure when we expose. Now, for example, what we expose today, or most of these non-criteria pollutants, their result will come from maybe 10 years time. So that's another thing actually we have to be mindful of. So some of these NCPs I'm going to divide. I mean, this is not only the non-criteria pollutants, but I will be focusing on these two mainly. What are called these persistent organic pollutants, or POPs, and also polyaromatic hydrocarbons. So in case of persistent organic pollutants, there are like intentional sources of this one, because this persistent organic pollutant, especially containing these halogens, they are specially manufactured for purposes like, for example, maybe fire retardant, firefighting forms, and so on, because they have a very peculiar characteristic. So they have very unique characteristic, their product. But unfortunately, they are persistent and then sometimes toxic. Okay, so like for example, most of these pesticides and some industrial chemicals we purposefully synthesize. So they are actually not in the natural environment. Okay, so we purposefully produce intentional sources. But also, if you take another group of persistent organic pollutants, they are not actually intentional, but these are unintentional. We don't want them, but they actually form during processes like maybe combustion and any other industrial products. So mainly we talk about this one when you talk about POPs, especially dioxin and furan. Okay. And then if you take polyaromatic hydrocarbons, so I'll let you know what these polyaromatic hydrocarbons, and they are also, there are natural sources. So this is mainly from combustion, and we have this like this wildfire or volcanic eruptions. They can result in this pH, but again, the most of the pH in the environment come from the combustion. Okay, it may be like internal engine combustion, like in vehicles or any other industrial processes, waste burning or whatever. Then there is a chance of forming of this polyaromatic hydrocarbon. So during this presentation, basically we will be focusing on these two groups. Okay, the UPOPs, so unintentional persistent organic pollutants, and polyaromatic hydrocarbons. Okay, so persistent organic pollutants, or POPs, so these are, as mentioned, they have very high half-lives. So as a result, they are persistent. They stay in the environment for a long time. As mentioned, they are bioaccumulative. And at the moment, there are, earlier we had what are called this dirty dozen, which are actually listed by the Stockholm Convention as kind of the persistent organic pollutant, but there are now about another 16 added to the list. So altogether there are 25 compounds has been listed by the Stockholm Convention as this persistent organic pollutant. So we are also a kind of signatory to this convention. So as a result, as a nation, we have to take certain action to address, let's say, the generation and release of these compounds to the environment. So as mentioned, some of they are intentionally produced, but mainly in our case, actually in Sri Lanka, what we have to worry mostly is this what are called unintentional byproducts, so what are called UPOPs. Okay, so if you take the sources of these things, so intentionally produced one, these are industrial chemicals, specially synthesized for a kind of specific purposes, maybe like pesticide or maybe coolant, like these PCBs, and then fire retardants, or maybe like water repellent. So as mentioned, they have very useful properties, but unfortunately, they have this bad qualities also. Then also, as mentioned, the other things are these what are called unintentional POPs, UPOPs, especially dioxin and furan. So now under this UPOPs, we mainly discuss about dioxin and furan when we talk about, so these are like polychlorinated dibions. So P dioxin, PC these, and then the other one is furan. Okay, now these are the, for example, the structure. So this is now this structure can have very different, forms. So as a result, like for example, if you take this PCCDS or dioxin, they can have something like 75 different configurations. So we call them congeners. And then if you take like, for example, this one, furan, it can have something like 135 different forms, but out of that, something like 10 are like dioxin-like properties, like this persistence and then toxicity and so on. Okay. So because of that, now when you like, for example, when you estimate this compound in the environment or emitted from a source, when you say this much of dioxin, actually it's a combination of all these things. Okay, so as a result, normally we kind of express this composition as a what I call this toxic equivalent. This is basically, I will show you, this is a kind of conversion that we do. So these are different forms, but the conversion is based on the toxicity. So the most toxic compound among them is this first one, TCDD. So we take the toxicity of that one as 1 and compare the toxicity of other compounds. And then, for example, this one, according to WHO, these two have the same, but normally we use this other indicator. Sometimes now we use this one. So for example, compared to, let's say, this one, TCCD, this third one has only 1/10 of the toxicity. So now what you do, like it's conversion. So if you have this many micrograms of this one and then this many micrograms of this one, basically you convert. So let's say 10 micrograms of this one will be 10 toxic equivalent, and then let's say if it is 10 of this one, this will be 1, because we multiply by the concentration and then convert into this equivalent to this compound, like we convert our money into a single kind of currency. Like same way we convert everything into one group, that is basically this first one, okay, and then express our concentration as toxic equivalent. Like for example, micrograms of toxic equivalent means when you take all the concentration, that is equivalent to this many micrograms of actually this compound. Okay, so this is also something we should know when you read about this concentration. So their health impact. So mainly they are what are called these endocrine disruptors. So that means basically they disrupt our hormone system, and then that will make a lot of complications in our body. And then also some of them are carcinogens. That means they can cause cancer. And then also they can suppress the immunity of our body. And also sometimes exposure to this one, especially the mother's exposure during the pregnancy, can result in like birth defect and so on. So because of that one, actually this is a kind of very nasty, these are very nasty compounds. But actually if you take our intake, most of the intake will come from food, because as I mentioned, because of our this bioaccumulation, especially these things, especially in meat, their concentration can be very high. And these are like the fat soluble. So as a result, they will be like in eggs, meat, and milk and so on. Okay. So the maximum recommended dose, I mean, our intake should be something like 10 picograms per kilogram of body weight. So that means actually this is a very, very small quantity. Okay. And as mentioned, so their half lifetime is something like 7 to 10 years. So maybe that means like things that was emitted about 10 years ago, half of it is still in our environment. So that means again the concentration can increase over the time if you don't kind of address the emission of these compounds into the environment. So the other thing is the risk. Now, for example, I mean, these are not like very concrete evidences, but they have a very high risk. Like, for example, if like 1 million exposed, maybe something like 1,000 can get the cancer. But these are like this is like the kind of upper bound, the maximum levels of risk associated with this compound. And also the other properties, actually now most of these criteria pollutants, they have a, what is called a threshold. Now, for example, we define our let's say CO concentration. So that I mean maximum permissible concentration, we have ambient air quality regulations, so they limit. So that means we those levels have been kind of achieved, I mean kind of defined. We know that exposure to those level will not have a significant health impact. So there is a threshold beyond which only you get this health impact. But when it comes to this compound, actually there is no threshold like that. So that means even very minute exposure can result in health impact. It's not always, but there is a probability that maybe you get cancer because of exposure to these compounds. Then the other group, that is the polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons or polyaromatic hydrocarbon or PAH. So these are basically compounds that contain 2 or more benzene rings. So the first one is naphthalene containing 2 benzene rings, and they are actually, at least some of these are carcinogen. And they are actually formed mostly during the incomplete combustion. So normally we know incomplete combustion result in like carbon monoxide, black smoke, and so on. But in those black smoke, you can have this polyaromatic hydrocarbon also. So there are hundreds or if not thousands of these compounds, but normally when you do the kind of the investigations of the levels and so on, mainly we focus on these 16 compounds, which have been kind of defined by the, again, US EPA. So most of the studies are based on these 16 compounds. For example, we also did one study in Candy, 2 studies actually. So we measured these 16 compounds in the Candy environment. Okay, so this is the first one, naphthalene. And some of these high molecular weight, actually, the pHs are non-carcinogens. Now, for example, this one is non-carcinogen, and also like as in case of POPs, again, when you measure this concentration, if you want to like express the toxicity of that concentration level, we convert all this into using what I call these toxic equivalent factors to let's say micrograms of this compound. And that means we take the toxicity of this one or toxic equivalent factor of this one as 1, and others are compared to that. Now, for example, if I remember correct, this will have something like 0.001 or 0.01 toxic equivalent factor. So that means if you have like 100 micrograms of that one naphthalene, that is equal to like 1 BAP, we call it BAP or benzopyrene, 1 microgram of that one. So likewise, we have the toxic equivalent factor so that we can convert all these concentrations into this one and then express the total toxicity of the, let's say, exposure, and then do the risk assessment and so on. So again, sources, main source, actually, if you actually look at this pollution problem, the main culprit is actually the combustion. So it can be industrial combustion or maybe firewood burning at household level, vehicle emissions, and then open burning of waste, and then also like this agricultural residue burning and so on. So these are the main sources of polyaromatic hydrocarbons in our environment. So combustion actually is the worst actually thing that we have kind of invented in terms of pollution generation. Okay, so this is kind of introduction to these 2 groups, and then let's see how is the situation in Sri Lanka actually when it comes to this compound in the environment. As I mentioned earlier, this persistent organic pollutants, so these are covered by this Stockholm Convention, and also we are part of it. We are signatory to this one. So as a result, there are some obligations. Now, for example, I think it's every 5 years, even though we have not done it. So every 5 years, we have to kind of do a national inventory and find out the level of this compound in our environment, and also come up with some national implementation plan to address or to reduce these compounds coming into the environment. Then actually I was part of that group, and then I did this persistent organic pollutants. So there were several groups actually, some working in this PCBs, and then some other like this what I call intentional thing, but I covered what I call this non-intentional persistent organic pollutant, mainly this dioxin furan. And this is basically the national inventory in 2013. So this is the latest we have. And so as you can see now, this is toxic equivalent per annum in gram. So it's a very small quantity. But when you convert this one actually into picogram, because you remember the dose is defined 10 picograms per day per kilogram of body weight. So in 2013, something like 181 grams of toxic equivalent of these compounds were emitted to the environment. So mainly to the air. But they will, they will not stay in the air for a long time. Ultimately, this will end up in this food chain and so on. So the main sources were like the waste incineration. So in waste incineration, this is mainly medical waste. So something like out of these 58, something like 54 comes from medical waste incineration. So during that time, we did not have proper method to let's say incinerate or dispose this medical waste. So most of the time it's like very crude way of almost open burning. And then the second one is open burning, mainly waste, the domestic waste and agricultural residue. And the third one is actually power generation. So this is another thing actually you have to kind of like most of the time when it comes to power generation and so on, we talk about this air pollution and so on, but actually there are other sources like even like individual household level waste burning can contribute a lot when you like take it as a whole. Okay. So most of it like ended up in air, something like 140. And then also like other things, something like in residues. So that's another thing, like when you burn things, the ash will have certain part of it. So if you don't dispose this ash properly, then again this is ultimately going to end up in the environment. So mainly in air and also in residues, especially in ash. So this is with the permission of Mr. Senanayaka, because we did a study for the Ministry of Health recently regarding this status of healthcare waste management. So there also one thing we did was like estimation of this UPOPs. So now from 54 to actually now it has come to something like almost like 18 grams of toxic equivalent per year. So there is a drastic reduction. And one reason is actually, okay, so it's a private company, but when you have a very good air pollution control units and unit is like continuously operated, their emission factors are much lower than when you do it open burning or you burn it like in not properly designed incinerator. So you see it reduced from 40,000 to 1 in case of open burning to high-tech continuous incineration with sophisticated air pollution control system, or from kind of crudely designed incinerators to this one, you have again 3,000 times a reduction. So this reduction resulted in something like this 1/3 of, to reduce the level from 2013 to 2019 to this 13, from 54 to 17. Then also I did a kind of study with the MSc student because I had a lot of information about this, what I call this activity rates. So because of that, I used the same data to estimate other pollutants like pH and then also NOx, the non-volatile, non-methane volatile organic compound, black carbon, all those things. And so again, you can see the levels of pH is much higher because these are in tons, not in grams or anything. So these are verified because we published this one also. So there again, the fuel combustion, power generation, and then also waste disposal. So they contributed a lot. So mainly the fuel combustion, especially firewood burning at domestic level, because you know when you do this firewood burning, a lot of smoke are emitted. So that means their emission of pH also is very high. So again, it's not the industrial or transport. Mainly these other kind of unsuspected sources are the main sources of these compounds. So these are the levels. But now what happened? Now, for example, this pH. So we have estimated in 2013 something like 181 grams of toxic equivalent ended up into the environment. And what happened to that? How much actually we receive from that? Okay, so now if you convert actually this 181 grams into the daily maximum permissible dose, so this is actually sufficient to provide that dose daily to something like 700 million. Okay, you can do the calculation. So it's a, even though it seems to be very small, it's a huge quantity. I mean, it does not mean that this whole thing going to ended up in humans, but that is a way to look at the level of the problem. Then also, do we know what is the health impact? Now, no, as an example, we know we hear a lot of these cancer cases, but we don't know what are the sources. Can this also contribute to that problem? Okay. Then also not only these things, because we at least know this much ended up in the environment when it comes to both, but there are other chemicals. We don't know how much is actually going into the environment. And then also, what is the health burden of these toxic chemicals? We don't have any idea actually. And what effective action actually we can take to address this issue? Because as I mentioned, when you know there is a problem, it is too late, because now we feel the problem because of the things happened maybe 10 years ago. So even if you take some action now, there are 10 years of emissions that you have to deal with. So that is why we have to be very proactive when it comes to these compounds. Okay, so that means actually we should know what happens, environmental fate. Now, this is an example, nice example. This is like for example, this is a US one. So they can actually kind of tell how much will be, let's say, a typical daily intake of this persistent organic pollutant. So as mentioned, mainly it is from food. So they know, let's say, the typical values in food by the analysis, and then you know daily intake and so on. So you can convert that one into the intake, picograms per kilogram of body weight. So that is something like 2.41. And then also from atmosphere, soil, and so on, another contribution that is compared to this one is less. So altogether, it's something like 2.6. So they know it is less than, let's say, this permissible level, 10 picograms per kilogram of body weight per day. So they can assume they are safe, but we don't have a clue. We don't know, for example, how much is the quantity of this thing in our milk, eggs, and so on. And also actually, and also they also look at what happens to this one, like with time. So one of the good indicator is actually the level of these POPs in the breast milk. Okay, because unfortunately, when we have this one taken in, these are, as I mentioned, these are fat soluble. So as a result, most of it, something like maybe 20% of that one will end up in milk, and then unfortunately, this is going to be transferred to the infants. Okay, so and then they can be affected. So because of that, actually in developed countries, this is taken as a very serious thing, and also this take as an indicator to see the effectiveness of actions they have taken. Because now in this case, they see, okay, maybe up to this point there are no actions taken properly, but after that, maybe the action taken has resulted in gradually lowering the level of this compound in breast milk. So now they do certain thing, and also they can see what is happening with their effort. We also actually have a project ongoing, but unfortunately we started about maybe 2019, but we still could not get this collection of milk because of the situation. But otherwise, like if we did not have this COVID situation, at least we will have some information about the level of this persistent organic pollutants in our, let's say, mother's breast milk. It's another indicator actually to see the ultimate impact of this one in humans. Then also, like not only this one, like maybe there are other compounds also, okay, PCBs and so on. You can actually see because of the action taken, gradually it is reducing. And this is a very useful information for decision making. Okay, so basically, in summary, when it comes, so we talk about what I call these non-criteria pollutants. So when it comes to non-criteria pollutants, we actually don't know the level in the environment and also the level of human exposure to these compounds. So, and also we don't know anything about, let's say, health burden of this one. So as I mentioned earlier, we cannot wait until this health burden is visible or seen, because then it will be too late. Okay. So even without knowing what is going, there are certain actions actually you can take. Like, for example, this strict enforcement of this emission standard, maybe vehicular, or maybe then also stack emission, stationary sources, and then banning of this open burning, because in case of the both like UPOPs and then PH, this is one of the major source, and also the agricultural residues, especially the after the harvest they burn this residue, and it's a huge source. Actually, if you remember, several months ago we had this haze. Actually, it was a result of this agricultural waste burning in India, North India. So it's actually a large emitter of this the particles, and then also these toxic compounds. So even though probably we are not kind of concerned about it. So this is basically what I wanted to kind of present to you during the given time. So I hope I could convey some message regarding this compound, and also like the importance of paying due attention to these compounds, not only talking about this what are called criteria air pollutant. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor Karunaratne. Now we started this series with Dr. Sugatapala's presentation on air quality. Then we had a very scaring presentation by Dr. Inoka Suravira. I think this is even more scaring. This information is, I think, this is hidden. Not many people are aware of this kind of this situation where we are in. So thank you very much for enlightening us on this. Now the floor is open for questions. You can either use chat function, or since we have only few people here, you can raise hand and ask your question. Yes, yes, Mr. Parakram Jayasinghe. Please.
Thank you, Karu. It's like Gamini says, more scary set of data, and also indicates, how the Sri Lankans are blissfully unaware where we are. You see, this kind of information is not at all known by, I think, even what is called the educated public, let alone the general public, who are all affected equally. So I start with a request to Gamini. All these presentations, Gamini, we should get them uploaded into the web, and also request each one to convert into a publication, hopefully which you can get published in the paper, so that at least some people will get to know. So to get it, I mean, particularly I think Dr. Ilokas and Karu's 2 lectures must be published. People are blissfully unaware. Now, having said that one, there are 2 things that are happening now, which you must also be aware. One is Norocciolo ignores all these things. You see, so like he said, the last 10 years of operation would have added all these things. Our late friend Dr. Ratsiri was always trying to bring this one up, what is called the invisible danger, which are not known or not measured and not even looked at. That is one. And the more current one is the present power plant for waste to energy. As far as I know, if I reliably understand, absolutely no control about even checking on furans and dioxins. So we happily carry on with that one. So that's another area that we need to bring it out. The third one is, of course, although it's not very much in the news, the fourth coal plant, they are quietly proceeding with that one. So what would be brought out usually is the amount of carbon dioxide and, the particulates and all that. You see, it's impossible to get it across to them that however small this thing or how effective your method of catching them are, we are importing all the pollutants and dumping them in Sri Lanka. And now with this plan to make bricks from them, they will be distributing all over the country too. So these factors must be brought into to focus, and really we have to take action on that. And the starting point definitely is to get these things published in the papers and continuous exposure of highlighting the health effect of that. At least that could get the attention of the people, hopefully. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Jayasinghe.
Just 1 second, Gamini, I want to ask Karu.
Yeah.
Sorry, Professor Karu.
No, it's okay. For me, Karu is actually more friendlier than anything else. So you can always call me Karu.
I thought we have banned the pops. Sometime ago, I think we were working on it. I think Padmini was very much involved in it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you can actually prohibit importation of certain things, but unfortunately, things I mentioned, these are called UPOP, so unintentionally produced things. So when you burn waste that contains maybe PVC or chlorine containing thing, then that will unfortunately produce this one.
Yeah. But at least the pesticides and things like that.
Yeah. So actually pesticide, when it comes to pesticide, according to our register of pesticides, they say they don't have any pesticide that contains POPs.
Okay. Yeah. That is something, one step.
And also I think now the ministry is working out the spacing out of this PCB containing transformers working with the CEB. There are some things going on, but actually these other sources, as I mentioned, this unknowingly burning of waste, agricultural waste burning, and then also not properly managing healthcare waste and so on, they also contribute a lot without knowing, unfortunately.
That is true.
May I ask a question, please?
Yes,
please.
Thank you, Dr. Parakrama. I think, as Mr. Gamini said, it's very scaring, but I think we can do something for the next generation at least. Now, my question is actually 2017, September, through a Gazette notification, open burning of plastics, it was banned.
Yeah.
But all know that it is never implemented properly. There are two things. One is the local authorities they don't care. Other thing is even the people, there is no reporting mechanism. Anyone burns plastic, nobody is worried. And the environment police also, they are very ineffective. That is one thing. My question is, is there any data or some indication to about this burning of plastics? The effect, what is the effect actually at the moment? And because if we have taken action on that, maybe the situation would have been better. The second question is, when it comes to fire retardants, I think most of the vehicles imported now we can't avoid it, but there is a lot of fire retardants used in motor vehicles.
Yeah.
But we don't have a policy for disposal of motor vehicles separately, because that also sometimes goes into the recycling plants.
Yes.
So what is the effect? Thank you so much.
Yeah. Okay. So regarding the open burning of waste, actually, we did not have proper data to estimate the quantity of open burning, but there were some studies which indicated, especially in rural areas, more than, and also in some actually, unfortunately, areas where there is this waste collection facilities, up to maybe 50% of the waste is burned at household level. Because one of the reason, as mentioned, it's basically, it's probably they think it's easier than collecting and then also leaving it to be collected by the authorities. And also sometimes, unfortunately, even it happened here, some of the people, they think like burning of this one will help to repel mosquitoes and so on. So because of that, deliberately they keep it until the afternoon and then burn. So that actually contribute, like if you take the second most one, so it is actually, I have the figures I have to find. But like if you take this one, so open burning process, so this is mainly from household waste burning, and then also some burning happens at let's say this disposal site, and then the agriculture. So if I remember correct, 1/3 of this one is from household level waste burning. And also when it comes to pH, also again it's very much similar, like agricultural waste burning. You see, actually now there was a question how much of this agricultural residues are kind of burned. So there was a study actually done by Peradeniya Agriculture Faculty. They said something like in Polonnaru area, 50% of the waste is burned. But we took a kind of conservative figure, and it's again, this is not grams. You remember, this is ton. So that will result in something like 18 tons of this PHS emission to the environment. So it's even much higher than altogether what are the, I mean, coming from the transport or industrial processes, because emission factors for these are very high. So we don't have emission factors, but we took the emission factors available in the literature. But when it comes to like burning in this paddy field and so on, they can probably emit more than that because of the like they are wet and the combustion is very poor, and then that will result in more pH emissions than probably their values. So and also that's why I mentioned, like as a kind of recommendation, maybe it's better to kind of enforce these things, the emission standard, and also this. Actually, there is a regulation, it seems, because whenever we take this one up, CES say, no, we have a regulation. So that's it. No one is looking at whether it is kind of properly implemented or nothing, but they say, okay, we have the regulation.
You are right. You are right.
Professor Karu, there's another
Yeah.
another question connected to the same thing. Thank you, sir, for your information presentation. My problem is how can we aware the general crowd on this
Yeah.
and stop open burning of household waste and agriculture residues?
Yeah.
This household burning awareness. Even I see, a lot of, even the educated crowd, sometimes they are unaware of, the situation now that we have. Even, I think you remember in the survey we carried out in the health sector. Even some of these medical stuff, they are not aware of, the implications.
Yeah.
And my, every day I see in my residence, my next door, there's a specialist. Of course, he's not living there now. His parents are there. Every day, very close to my house, every day, almost every day, they burn plastic. They burn plastic, and my wife used to tell them, we can't, to blame them. She has told many times that it is very harmful, but this is happening everywhere. This is happening everywhere. I think her question is very relevant. Now, she is always associated. They said, okay, now we have the regulation. So how do we do this? So I think the awareness is the most important thing. But and the second thing is open burning in the dump site. Also, we understood when when we went through this process, NDCs in the waste sector, that is also intentional burning.
Yeah.
Intentional.
To reduce the load, they burn.
Not only that, it seems, with that, there are a lot of other business opportunities.
Okay.
So this kind of unfortunate situation, but they are, of course, they have set a target. in NDCs, at least, to reduce it by 2030, this burning of dump site.
Yeah.
For that, they are going to take some action. But this is a huge problem, as he says.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Actually, there are certain actions because, as I mentioned, after the inventory, we have to come up with this national implementation plan. So we actually kind of recommended the ministry to carry out some public awareness sessions. And some of things actually work. Like, for example, we carried out series of workshops with school students. Actually, it's in Kandy only because of another project and so on. There we discussed this one. And in addition to that, there was another project where we developed this curriculum for schools and then other vocational, institutional, and universities, focusing on these sources of persistent organic pollutant. So ministry is trying to kind of get the NIE to at least kind of introduce some part of these things into the school curricula. So I don't know how much successful they are. So there are some attempts being kind of made.
Yeah, I think there is one area that needs addressing. Like, for instance, this open burning. I mean, including me, I did not realize that open burning of biomass resulted in this kind of pollution. We were always worried about carbon dioxide and particulates and all that coming from open burning. But the fact that it will create this kind of highly toxic compounds is not known, very much not known. So that is one area, because there are no one solution. We'll have to have different approaches, and also, as you know, in Sri Lanka, any of the regulations are rather ineffective. So the better impact could come from awareness. So that's what I also suggested, that we must start by getting this published. But I really would like to see a much, I should say, a simplified version with lots of graphics and impactful publications. You see, which can still go to places like schools, because children are the best changes, agents. So there need to be a series of actions on that one. And I'm ashamed to say that I did not realize of the gravity of open burning of agricultural waste. You see, I was, of course, as you know, I'm pursuing it for a different reason, not to burn openly, but the damage caused is so much that I really didn't know. So you can see what the situation with the public is.
Yeah, so it's actually related to the awareness. So that is what actually, I mean, one of the main recommendations we put forward during that one is this public awareness, and then also targeted awareness. Like, let's say, for example, the healthcare work, I mean, this medics and so on, they don't know actually the risk of this dioxin and furan and so on. So likewise, the general awareness and then also the targeted one.
Quite right.
So something worked, but I don't know, like, for example, maybe until the next round of this national implementation plan, nothing will probably move much.
I think SCP also has a role to play, Gamini, because this I think, I was also thinking, I mean, understanding, this situation. I think there's a gap, big gap here. Maybe we could think of, the getting into, doing something in, at least, the creating awareness, we can take this seriously. Nimal is raising hand. Nimal, your turn now.
Yeah, actually, thank you, Dr. Karunaratne, for your informative presentation. In fact, the ultimate decision, what I have to say is, as far as much as possible, we are going beyond the nature's the kind of mechanisms. As much as we are trying to make our system more artificial, the impact will be high. So that is the message I think we have to put it in our heads. And also, as much as when we are moving away from the natural system, we may have to put more and more resource efforts like pollution control mechanisms and so on. So I can remember the the good example which I learned from from Japan. Let's say they earned massive profits through the industrialization, but later on they realized because of the Itai disease and then Inamata disease and Yokai Chiasman, all these cases, they realize they have to allocate part of their earnings, or part of the economics has to be divert to minimize the impact. So that's how they, I think, even before introducing about this, the sustainable development concept, they were really moving to that side. So that is actually, we are lacking in our country. That is one thing. And of course, when you're talking about the open burning, I can remember starting from Blue Mendel. Blue Mendel, how many times started firing? That's auto firing, autonomous firing. And then I think even the Mitotamulla had the same cases.
Yeah.
And again, I can remember very seriously, I can remember the Katunayaka Siduvan, twice it started burning. And then very recently, again, a similar thing. So, and even the same thing happened to the Muthuraja one. I can remember, still I have the photographs. So we were trying to, make the awareness through our, channels. So, but it is not sufficient enough. This is actually, Mr. Denanayaka, what I am planning, because hope you could remember I was talking about this CP cell or the SCP cell, the network program, which I'm strongly planning. So one of the activity which I'm planning with this one, actually, that's something I was discussing with you before the session. Uh, what I discussed with let's say the SLBC was at least to have a kind of a program every week, like, and then to make the awareness on a similar fashion, on a similar way. Definitely, we can get. I have already discussed with some of the parties who can provide the funding for the airtime as well. So that's why there was a delay in this one, because with my other works, I'm time to time I'm meeting the people. I'm trying to get the strong, the program built up. So, and then at least to every day to bring the message to at least a one person, maybe a one individual to get the message, and then him to become the part of the SCP cell, cellular network. So that is something which I have in my mind. So anyway, with respect to the burning thing, uh, some people, they have a very wrong idea that burning of polythene is okay, but the problem is only with the PVC. So that is again a misconception. And then about the Colombo garbage issue, it's a very pathetic situation, because sometimes back, maybe about 1 year back, the municipal council, when they are collecting the material, they used to accept it in a separate mode. But now they are taking everything, and they are taking everything together, and then just dumping at the Kerala Pitya, the waste to energy plant. So this is I don't know. These are the things actually which we have to focus on. And then finally, uh, I think still I have some more information about those. Uh, Hope you can remember, in rural areas, when they do the road tarring or the road covering, they use this solid tar, bitumen boiling. What
Yeah.
they use is basically the old tires.
Yeah.
So how much of black carbon and these the pollutants they are emitting? One day I try to explain this one to one particular person who from the municipal council. Then I was being blackguarded. So this is the situation, right? So I don't know whom we have to tell. So it's basically one thing I have already realized. I think everybody may agree with me. So far, we were looking from the top-down approach. That from the top, everybody will, like the politicians or the policymakers everybody, they will come up with some kind of a solution to downwards, but it's not happening. So I think this is the high time to bring the message. So that's why I already thought to have this CP cellular system, and then to bring the message or the kind of voice from the bottom layer. I think that will be the only way. At least we can initiate this sort of thing during our lifetime. At least maybe the future generations will be, I think, benefited. Thank you.
Gamini, can I ask a question?
Yes.
Yeah.
Please.
Karu, excellent presentation.
Thank you, Mr.
My question is now, can burning of bodies in crematoriums lead to emission of PAH? The second thing is now in India, because of COVID, there's mass scale burning of bodies.
Yeah.
And using firewood also, and open burning.
Yeah.
So how will it affect the emission of PAH, and what will be the effect to us also, to the country?
Yeah. So actually, in case of pH, probably it's available, but I could not find the emission factor, for example, for this cremation. But actually, when it comes to POPs, there is an emission factor, and we have estimated that one. So if it is like proper burning, there is a part of this, like, for example, if you have any chlorine, however best we do the burning, probably there is a chance to form the POPs, dioxin and other things. But when you have a good combustion, actually the pH emission is low because it's like, actually we did a kind of work and it shows kind of there is a good correlation between CO level and pH. So if you have higher CO level in emission, that means, okay, you will have higher level of pH emitted also. Because pH measurement is very, I mean, it's a very difficult thing. It's not easily measured. But if you like have a CO level high, means you have to suspect that, okay, the other compounds are also there. So like in case of India, actually that burning, it's like very inefficient. Definitely a lot of pH emission happen. So this happens, like, for example, during these forest fires, I can't remember, in Malaysia or somewhere. Again, after that, actually, there were studies published. There was a high level of this pH concentration after that episode. And also, I forgot to tell you, like, for example, the candy, the work we did, now the WHO guideline for this kind of risk, the carcinogen risk, if it is like 1%, 1 increase per million, that takes as acceptable. But when it comes to, like, for example, that means, like, for example, if we expose 1 million people to a certain level of, let's say, PAH, if the cancer incident due to that one is 1 or low, then that is acceptable. But if it is more, that is not acceptable. So that is how the risk assessment done. Now, in case of candy, in some places, if you have like 24-hour living in that those concentration, we have like 46, not 1, 46 per million risk. So when it comes to like school student, they stay like maybe 6 hours at least. So again, something like more than 10 per million. So it's 10 times higher risk than the WHO recommended. So this is actually something probably, I mean, and we should not wait. I repeatedly told you, there will be a time probably this will be seen, but then it is too much, too late, too much and too late.
No, actually, that's what I see. The best way of getting it across is to publish those numbers in big letters, you know, that where we are and where we should be, is kind of thing. Karu, also I want to ask, now, isn't combusting at a high temperature the means of destroying this? I think furans and
Yeah. So there are two things, like, so that is why, like, for example, indirectly our emission standards say we have to have more than 1100, if I remember correctly, and the residence time is 2 seconds or more in the in the incinerator. So that will make sure that this is not formed during the combustion, but there is another formation mechanism that is during the cooling of this flue gas. So if you have a window between, let's say, 400 to 600 degrees centigrade,
Yeah.
and the residence time is more than probably 1 second or so during that zone, then again you have there's another mechanism of formation of this dioxin. So that is why in good incinerators, there is a quenching of this flue gas to cool it down very rapidly without leaving within that window 400 to 600 window.
So does that mean that if it is broken down by high temperature?
Yeah, they can reform. Yeah.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. So that is also a part of a good incinerator air pollution control system, quenching.
But at least that specification.
It is actually lower than, like, for example, if you have a lower temperature and both mechanism will be in place. So at least if you have a good combustion condition in the chamber, then that will reduce a certain amount, probably be formed during that window of temperature, but it's probably much less than within the chamber.
Now the situation is, Colombo people are now very happy they have an outlet for the garbage. But those people really are looking forward to getting the plastics because their calorific value is too low otherwise. But like I mentioned, there's absolutely no control over this flue gases. And also now, what about now? The other option is, of course, to absorb them in carbon. Then, of course, it's a limited amount.
Actually, now it's at least theoretically, like the gasification is a good option, because in gasification, after forming this gasification, the syngas, you can do the cleaning. You can remove this hydrochloric acid and so on. And then if you burn, there is a very little emission of this dioxin and the thing. But that is like expensive and still in the kind of like experimental stage. But gasification probably is a promising one.
No, there were offers for this Kerala PTA one to go to that route. For whatever reason, they didn't accept.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. Kasun, it's your turn. Kasun, you have been waiting. Kasun Karnanayaka, are you still there? Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Please go ahead. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Gamini sir, and thank you, Karurananda sir, for that valuable presentation. And in that presentation, so that the pollutant levels in the air has reduced with the introduction of these the new technologies and also the incineration processes.
Yeah.
And my question is regarding the residue.
Yeah.
And what is the best solution for that residue? I mean, I have heard that that can be used to do new the bricks and everything, but so what is the best solution when we consider the Sri Lankan context?
Yeah, so Sri Lankan context, there are like this ash disposal. Like now, the low cost one is to go for a good ash pit. So it's completely sealed with concrete and so on. So you can put them there, and then you have to, after the completion, I mean, when it is completely filled, you have to completely shut it down, and so that there is no leaching and so on. So it's a kind of low cost, but also like this immobilization, like incorporating into the cement product is a kind of acceptable thing, but you have to test whether there is a leaching happen and so on. But this is another kind of recommended method. But actually that immobilization has to be done under proper condition, because otherwise, like if these bricks are going to disintegrate and so on, ultimately it's going to again end up in the environment. But at least, a good ash pit, especially for this medical incineration, is a solution because the quantity of ash generated is relatively low. But otherwise, the other one is this immobilization. But there are also like other high-tech one, but these are actually not like practically implemented, like this plasma treatment and so on. But these are not kind of, I have not seen practical applications.
Okay, Professor Karul, I can see in the chat box citing Chandima. Chandima is asking a question. I would like to have a clarification from you or anyone, including how about them on the same matter. Thank you very much for the excellent presentation.
There is a disturbance actually. Mr. Senanaik, you can mute.
Ajit.
Okay. Yeah. So this awareness is actually one way to go, actually, as mentioned. I don't know, maybe if our forum can start something, I can volunteer, like at least to share some of these things.
Yeah.
And so there should be a forum, actually. I don't know how we can go about it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So we
but maybe like for example, we have been meeting and so on, but our visibility is very low, and also the impact maybe some of these things also we can maybe think of.
There's another question asked by Ajit, maybe the last one. Do we test the non-criterion pollutants of imported milk powder and other food items?
As far as I know, no, because actually this criteria, I mean, thousands of these things are there, but I took only 2. So earlier there was this talk about this melamine and so on, but they are not actually properly tested, as far as I know. Now in some countries actually, now I don't know, actually maybe we have to worry about our residual pesticide in our vegetables than probably something in this imported milk.
Right.
But even that actually is not happening in this country, even though there is this office of pesticides, registrar's office and so on. I don't see anything happen. But I don't think like the testing, like for example, there was this big discussion about this aflatoxin. Now this has been there, like for example, when you dry this copra in sun, if you have this fungi growth, definitely this is there. So it's not only now, this has been there, but we don't know. So that is the unfortunate situation in our country. We don't have something like this Food and Drug Administration in the US. So you know, when you are outside, you can take anything from the supermarket, and we know we can even eat them raw. But even here, fruit, when we eat, we don't know what we take in addition to fruit, unfortunately.
Okay.
Professor Karu, can this during the milk powdering process, spray drying process, can there be a possibility to increase the amount of this POX and all these things?
No. I mean, per weight, because of the water disposal, like per kilogram, it will increase. But there will be no additional thing coming in if you have a good clean air is used, because like for spray drying you use clean. If you use clean air, but like for example for this air spray drying, if you use air that is contaminated with maybe another emission source in the factory, definitely you can have more coming in.
Right.
Yeah. Kamini, just one last comment. Hopefully the president is serious about saying that we want to restrict the use of chemical fertilizer and pesticides. You know how serious he is and how effective that will be. There are lots of people objecting to it, but if that takes into effect, then the demand for compost is going to go up. Hopefully that would be a help to reduce the burning of the agricultural waste. People will use more for composting. So there are different facets of this one. We should be looking at it. And I think we'll be doing a great service if we somehow they get started on some kind of a education program. Actually, coupled with Karu's presentation, very, very impactful. Also with Dr. Inoka's ones, you see, both together. I think we should try and plan. I think the article is something we should do immediately because it's already there. But we must extract some sort of graphical these things which will highlight this. And like Nimal mentioned, if we can get that exposure on the electronic media, that will be a way we can put some posters up to like say give a kick on the backside of people, and also the people to start shouting, ordinary people to start shouting. that is the way that we would hopefully get something done. Easier said than done.
Yeah.
But unless that's why we are here. That's why we are CPs.
Yeah. Immediately also, like if you have a Facebook book page, maybe we can also share this one with the others so that the message will, because this is one of the kind of fastest media now at the moment we have. But these are like too long for probably for that kind of thing.
That's Karu. That is where you could help, I think, to extract a few of the most impacting slides.
Yeah.
Okay. So with that, we will conclude this session, and I will now stop the recording. Yeah. So thank you.
And also thank you very much, because this is the best audience I had for a presentation.
Thank
it
you.
was very active. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And okay, so let me stop the recording.